Okay, I feel like this is gonna be fun to do because I haven't done a video like this since over a year ago. And since then, I've changed. I've become more jaded by Australia. I've lived here longer. So I just feel like it's gonna be fun. Last time, though, it was more about the questions that Americans asked me about Australia. Now it's kind of a mix of things that I've learned just about Australian culture, the people, and a bit of questions that I get as like being someone who moved to Adelaide and being an American from home and then also from people here. So it's gonna be more of a mix of just observations and Australia-ism things that I've learned. First, I want to do the lingo and sayings. Some of these I think are South Australian and some are just Australian. And I learned all the basics when I moved here. I learned mate and reckon and keen. And these are a lot more specific. The first one that is a favorite is bachelor's handbag. If the person who told me this is watching this video, shout out. So apparently this is a rotisserie chicken, is a bachelor's handbag, because this is what this person told me, that a lot of tradies will buy a rotisserie chicken or a hot chook, as some people say, for lunch, and they're single bachelors. So that's a fun one. I don't think every South Australian knows this though, so I don't know where that comes from. The next one is, I'm not here to blink spiders. I'm not gonna go into that. Basically, it's like, I'm not here to waste time. I don't really like that one. Okay, I couldn't start a root in a brothel. I feel like maybe just use context clues. And then this is the way that you say a certain word, because last year I didn't realize that there are the same word that are completely different pronunciations and spellings. So we say aluminum and Australians say aluminium. And I had no idea about this until I was reading a package of what I thought said aluminum. And I was like, I didn't know that aluminum was spelled like that. And my housemate was like, aluminium? And I was like, oh wow, okay, so that's just like completely different. Those are the main ones that stick out in my mind. People ask me now if I say Australian things. A lot of people from Adelaide ask me that. I think that, yeah, naturally a lot of words like keen and reckon are just like in my vocabulary now. And I think other little things are as well, but I'm not about to say mate. Like that's not very natural for me. Also, like the inflection of the way I say things is very Australian now, and that is because I feel like I have to really pronunciate or enunciate my words for Australians to understand what I'm saying, because I naturally have always talked really fast. I grew up with three sisters in an Italian household. We naturally are like talking over each other and you have to kind of get everything out before someone else interrupts you. So that's why I talk so fast. So now even right now talking, I'm so conscious of how I'm pronouncing words in a way that people aren't going to ask me what a million times. So I have that little thing where Australians kind of end a sentence with like an up sound, and every single time I talk to my mom, she's like, you sound different. I mean, it's been 2 years now, so it's just gonna be natural that the way I talk is gonna change. And I think that's why it's so weird when I saw like the old video that I referenced at the beginning of this. I'm like, I feel like I talk so different. All right. Oh, and now I spell with S's instead of Z's in some words, like, oh, like the word optimize. Normally I'd spell that with a Z the American way. Now I spell it with an S. I am a copywriter for my job, so I'm writing in the Australian/British way every single day, but my phone still autocorrects to words with a Z. My computer autocorrects to words with an S. It's the same thing with like favorite and color, where it's OU instead of O. So now sometimes I forget where I am and I'm just kind of spelling in one way or the other. All right, now I kind of want to talk about general observations. Something I was thinking about the other day is how Australians are so environmentally conscious. And I think like a lot of them grew up more outside and doing things in nature because of the landscape of Australia. I almost feel I can probably see the direct impact of being not environmentally conscious more. I don't know. It's also a cultural thing. I noticed that every time I go to the grocery store, I never get a bag. Like unless I have a lot of things and I need a bag to carry and I didn't bring one, like I always will juggle a bunch of things in my hands to carry it to my car and inside my home. instead of getting a plastic or even paper bag because I feel like it's a waste. And that's not really something I ever cared about when I lived in New York. Same, honestly, with like aircon, turning the aircon off, turning the lights off. My parents always taught me to do that stuff to like save energy and save money, but I think the people I'm around are also conscious of it and sort of live like that. So now it's just second nature to me as well. Even not too long ago, I was making a video about why can't we just turn the heat on? And I've already adapted to just going with whatever the temperature is outside unless it's unbearable to me. So something that was a surprise to me is that the university cost, so cost of college in the US, cost of uni in Australia, isn't actually that much different. A lot of people I know paid like 40 grand for school or have even more than that in debt. And that's the same as in the States. If you go to school in state, to a state college, you're paying like 40 grand in tuition. The difference is how those are paid off. So Australians have a HECS debt where it's just all kind of set up and like automatically taken out of their paycheck to go toward that through the government, where for American students, you have to file for financial aid and you get a student loan, but you're kind of doing it yourself. And then that's up to you to externally pay that off. And everybody has different interest rates. But I learned that Australians have this thing going on with inflation where a lot of people's loans then went up to match what the cost of their degree would have been years ago to now. And something passed with that to make up for that. But anyway, so all that is to say, Australia has like their own things like that. And it's not like a lot of people I know will go to Europe to get a degree because it's so much cheaper. It's not like that. You know, you're paying a lot for uni. Okay. No Australian I've ever met has a credit card. This was wild to me because as soon as I was in college and I had to pay for something, it's like, yeah, get a credit card, you'll build credit. And I've always been used to putting things on a credit card. And then I met people here that just have never opened one. And I'm like, well, what do you do in an emergency? Like, that's so bizarre to me to not have that. And I'm like, wow, that must be so nice to always never have a credit card debt. But anyway, that was interesting. And yeah, it's because Australians are taught like credit card bad, credit bad, and Americans are taught credit good, build up your credit, take out loans, do all this stuff, then you'll be able to do this, get a house when you're older, you'll be able to whatever. That is a huge cultural thing. Everybody I know in the States has at one point had thousands of dollars on their credit card because that's just how you pay for things. I could go on about that. All right, cost of living. I always heard that Australia is really expensive and cost of living is really high. But after living in New York for 4 years and then moving to Sydney, I felt like it was kind of on an even playing level with cost of living. And I actually felt like a lot of things about cost of living in Australia was cheaper than the States. About a year ago, I even made a video saying, oh yeah, you can really afford things a lot more easily. But in the time that I left Australia in August 2024 and came back in February 2025, costs in general have risen, the housing crisis going on, and it's rapidly becoming more expensive. So I think that like even the places that were cheaper maybe than the States to live in Australia, those are now rising. Like Adelaide was always seen as an affordable-ish place to live. And it's like housing crisis, every house is like $1 million. At the grocery store, I'm seeing prices on things rise every single day. Like the price of the same thing that I go in to buy a week later is like $3 more. When I lived in Freshwater, which is one of the more expensive places to live in Sydney, and I went to buy a coffee, I could buy a latte for $4.50. Now I'm spending like $7-8 on a latte in Adelaide. So yes, Australia is expensive to live. However, I have found there are a lot of different things that you can actually save money on, and there are a lot more ways to make money. So I feel like there's opportunities to do better financially here. Going off that topic, price of houses. I mean, I think it's going to be comparable with, all right, so if you buy a house in LA, you're going to be spending probably $1 million. But if you go into like a suburb in Ohio, you can buy a house for like $200,000, right? In the suburbs and the hills of Adelaide, you're looking at $800,000 to buy a house. I don't know really when this started, where houses became that expensive, but for it to be like $1 million for a house, right? And take the conversion out of it, because if you have a certain amount of money in Australia, $1 million for a house is a lot of money, okay? I know so many people who are like, yeah, my budget for a house is $900,000. And also, you would think if you'd spend that much money on a house, you'd be picky, right? No, it's like, I'll take what I can get. Again, there's a housing crisis. That is so wild. Like the thought of ever buying a house, even if I were to stay in Australia, is so off my radar. But people do it. People build houses. People are like, oh, you put a down payment. The other thing that's interesting is the superannuation that a job pays is, they give you your salary and then they give you a superannuation on top of that salary. Most jobs in the US, corporate jobs, when you work, you put a percentage of your paycheck into your 401k and it's not taxed. But that's still part of like your annual salary. So this is what I mean when I say Australia has different things set up that just make life a little bit easier. There are some jobs that have that in the US, but the superannuation thing is the standard. And usually it's like 11% of what you make. Okay, so enough with the observations. Lastly, I want to go through questions that I've gotten as an American in Australia from mostly people from here, but also people from home. A lot of people ask me if it's weird to have Christmas when it's warm. The first year I was here when it was a warm Christmas, I was like, I didn't feel like Christmas. I was actually struggling with it. It was so weird to me. Now, maybe I'm used to it, but I do feel Christmassy right now. Like when I hear Christmas music at the mall, even though it's 100 degrees outside, I'm like, yes, I can feel the time of year. I think my brain is starting to adjust. So it's actually not weird to me anymore. So another question I get absolutely all the time is, how was it driving on the other side of the road? It's weird, but it's also weird how much you get used to something because of how adaptable our brains are. So it probably took me 2 months to get used to always driving on the other side of the road. There are some times where I'm like, okay, wait, I'm turning. Which lane am I turning into? I also think at night, for some reason, it's like my brain has to work harder to think of how I'm driving on the other side of the road. It actually was weirder than going back home and then adjusting back to driving on the right side of the road. Now, when I watch TV shows set in the States and people are driving on the right side of the road, my brain is like, they're driving on the wrong side of the road. People also ask me if I can use my driver's license from home. And yes, if you have a license from your home country that's in English, it's valid to use that in Australia. However, my license is expiring soon, so I'm gonna have to get a South Australian license, which is kind of exciting. 2 more questions. The next one is, will I be traveling home a lot / do I miss family? I have gotten over the hump of feeling really sad and down about being away from family, and not in like a negative way about them. It's just like, I've stopped thinking about it. So I don't have any active plans right now to go home. I feel like in a year or 2, yes, I'd like to see people. I am so focused on what I'm doing here, and I also talk to family from home all the time, that I don't feel sad about it anymore. I was really hung up on that when I moved here and was like dreading that, but I've found that if I just don't put so much energy into thinking that and focusing on that, like it is what it is and it's fine. Yes, there are times when I'm sick or there's something, it's someone's birthday and I'm like, oh, I just really wish like I had my mom right now. Like that makes me emotional even saying it. But at the end of the day, like, again, it just is what it is. Okay, and then how is it finding a job as someone on a visa? You always have more hurdles finding work when you're on a visa and you have limitations. I think that for me, I don't want to say it's been easy, but it hasn't been hard. It's more that like you just have to be resilient and actually put in the time and effort. Like going around to every place, sending in so many job applications, doing interviews and trials. It took me months to find a places that I fit in work-wise. But I also came here with 5 years of corporate experience. If I came here without that, then like right out of college or something, I'm sure it would have been harder to find a job. I think that it's just, I was looking for the right types of jobs that lined up with my experience where I could actually add something to a job. So it's really hard to answer that question because it literally depends. It depends on who you are. It depends on your experience and where you're living, what jobs you're applying to. But I do think that a lot of jobs are very open and welcoming to hiring people from other countries in Australia from what I've experienced. But again, like I've seen videos of people talking about how it's really, really hard to find work, or they're like in Melbourne or Sydney, or I don't know, there's just so many things that go into it. So that's a hard one. I think if you are wondering that, you should ask other people from the country that you're from who are living in the same cities that you're going to live in Australia, and then also like the type of work and experience that you have, like people who have those similar circumstances. Yeah, so that's everything now. I'll stop that there. That was like a fun recap of sort of like Adelaide things. Yeah, and that is it. Bye.